The harvest season has always been a critical time of the year for agrarian societies, marking the culmination of months of labor and signaling a period of feasting, rest, and spiritual reflection. In medieval Europe, a time when agriculture was the cornerstone of life, harvest celebrations were of enormous importance. Various regions developed distinct customs and traditions for celebrating this season, blending pagan rites with Christian beliefs as they expressed gratitude for a successful harvest. In the Middle Ages, the harvest season represented the year's most crucial period. A successful harvest was essential to ensure survival through the winter. Failures could mean famine, disease, and widespread death. The dependence on agriculture meant that people's lives were intertwined with the seasons, and thus, the rhythms of nature were celebrated with reverence. Communities would gather to participate in feasts, rituals, and ceremonies designed to give thanks to both Christian God and, in some places, lingering pre-Christian deities for the abundance of food. As Christianity spread across Europe, many pre-Christian harvest rituals were adapted into Christian practice. The Church, understanding the importance of agriculture in medieval life, incorporated the harvest into the religious calendar. The term Plough Sunday, for example, marked the beginning of the agricultural year, with priests blessing the ploughs and fields. In many regions, Rogation Days, the days before Ascension Day, were observed. These were days of prayer and fasting, where the faithful would seek blessings for the forthcoming crops. Processions through the fields were common during these days, blending ancient fertility rites with Christian prayers for divine protection and bounty. As the harvest came to an end, Lammas Day, or Loaf Mass, was celebrated on August 1st. Originating in Anglo-Saxon England, it marked the first harvest of wheat. On this day, loaves of bread made from the new grain would be taken to church to be blessed. Though initially a Christian holiday, Lammas also carried older pagan elements, blending the spiritual with agrarian life. The diversity of harvest celebrations across medieval Europe reflects the unique agricultural practices, climate, and cultural histories of each region. Despite regional differences, the themes of community, food, and gratitude were universal. In medieval England, the end of the harvest was celebrated with a festival known as the Harvest Home. After months of toil, villagers would gather to feast, drink, and give thanks for the successful gathering of the crops. The final load of grain would often be decorated with ribbons, flowers, and sometimes even dolls made from the harvested wheat. A notable part of the Harvest Home festival was the crying the neck tradition, particularly observed in the West Country. This involved the last sheaf of wheat being cut and held aloft, with the farmers shouting, "I have it!" This sheaf, representing the spirit of the harvest, would then be woven into a symbolic figure called the corn dolly, which would be kept until the next season. Following the celebration, the community would feast together in what was known as the Harvest Supper. Rich and poor alike would share in the meal, reflecting the community's unity and interdependence. This meal often involved generous portions of bread, meat, and ale, marking the end of the grueling harvest work with abundance and joy. In France, the harvest was closely tied to the Feast of St. Martin, November 11th, a day that marked the end of the agrarian year. St. Martin, a popular figure in medieval Christianity, was celebrated as the patron saint of soldiers, winemakers, and farmers. The date coincided with the slaughtering of animals for winter storage and the completion of the wine harvest. Known as Martinmas, this festival was celebrated with lavish feasts, often featuring goose, which was traditionally fattened during the harvest period. Wine, a crucial element of French agriculture, flowed freely. In regions like Burgundy and Bordeaux, this festival marked the end of grape picking and the start of the winemaking process. Thus, it held special significance for the many vineyard workers and vintners. In medieval Germany, the harvest season was marked by the celebration of Erntedankfest, or the Thanksgiving Festival. Similar to the English Harvest Home, this festival was held in late September or early October. Villagers would come together to offer thanks for the crops, gather for feasts, and participate in religious services. In many parts of medieval Germany, the Erntedankfest had strong pagan roots. Elements of older fertility rituals survived, especially in rural areas. Wheat or grain sheaves were often given symbolic importance, and figures like Demeter or the Corn Mother lingered in folk memory with offerings made to ensure future abundance. Communal feasts often included bread, beer, sausages, and roasted meats, And in some regions, the harvest crown, a crown made of wheat, fruits and flowers, was carried in processions before being offered at the church altar. This crown symbolized the connection between the harvest community and divine providence. In Italy, the warm Mediterranean climate shaped unique harvest traditions, particularly around the vendemmia, grape harvest, and the olive harvest. The vendemmia was a communal activity, as grape picking required many hands. This work was often followed by large communal meals, featuring bread, cheese, and, of course, wine. The harvest of olives occurring in late autumn was also a critical time for Italian agricultural communities. Olive oil was essential for cooking and trade. Like the vendemmia, the olive harvest was a community event, and local festivals often coincided with this period. In Tuscany, for example, San Martino's Day marked the turning of the agricultural year, with celebrations involving the sampling of new wine and the pressing of olive oil. In many medieval European harvest celebrations, pagan and Christian elements existed side by side. As Christianity spread throughout Europe, the Church often sought to incorporate and adapt existing pagan festivals rather than completely eradicate them. This blending of old and new practices can be seen in various harvest festivals across Europe. The use of corn dollies, for example, was a holdover from ancient fertility rites, where the last sheaf of wheat represented the spirit of the harvest. By medieval times, this tradition was often Christianized, but still retained its connection to the cycles of nature. Similarly, many of the processions and offerings that accompanied harvest celebrations had their roots in pagan rituals, but were repurposed to honor saints or to give thanks to God. In addition to the harvest, the fall season itself, particularly the festivals marking the end of the harvest, carried spiritual significance. Many of these celebrations were linked with All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day, November 1st and 2nd, marking the beginning of the dark half of the year. These festivals often combined elements of remembrance for the dead with the celebration of the year's agricultural achievements, linking the natural cycle of life and death to human spiritual life. The harvest season in medieval Europe was not only a time of hard work, but also of celebration, community bonding, and spiritual reflection. The harvest festivals varied from region to region, shaped by local agricultural practices, climate, and the blending of pagan and Christian traditions. Whether it was the Harvest Home in England, Martinmas in France, Erntedankfest in Germany, or the Vendemmia in Italy, the people of medieval Europe shared a common reverence for the land and the fruits of their labor. These celebrations were more than just markers of the agricultural year. They were expressions of faith, gratitude, and the communal spirit that bound medieval societies together. The rhythms of planting and reaping, of feasting and fasting, were deeply woven into the cultural fabric of medieval life, and the harvest was a time to rejoice in the bounty of the earth before the long, cold winter months set in.